What exactly is the H-1B program? And what is the history? Has it solved the problem that we are trying to solve? Is it inherently racist, as many people are saying? Your thoughts?
Yeah, so let me give you I'll do a quick rundown of like the H-1B itself. But before that, let me just give you a couple of nuggets. It's very interesting. Of all billion-dollar startups, 55% was started by an immigrant not born in the US. And of all Fortune 500 companies in the US, 55% was founded by a first or second generation immigrant. So immigrants have always played a vital role in the flourishing of the US. So now I'll dive into the H-1B program itself. What the US government announced is a one-time fee, as they clarified, of $100,000 that must accompany new H-1B applications that are filed after September 21st. And the way that administration framed it is as an anti-abuse measure. So the H-1B program was instituted in 1990 as a non-immigrant visa program that allows U.S. employers to temporarily employ foreign workers in specialty occupations that require advanced knowledge and skill. And the purpose was to address the anticipated skill shortages in critical industries, particularly STEM. There were some studies that went into that decision making, and there are a lot of people who have critiqued those studies and how they probably overestimated the need, etc. But regardless, that was the intent. The key features is that it has to be a specialty occupation requiring theoretical and practical application of highly specialized knowledge. It's a 3-year visa that can be extended to a maximum of 6 years, and they can apply for green card while they're here. The total number is 85,000 visas every year, but 20,000 is strictly allocated to those who are graduating with a master's degree or higher from U.S. universities. And there are also some exceptions. So universities, nonprofits, research institutions are not exempt, are exempt from this cap. So they are outside of this. There are also wage requirements, right? Employers are supposed to pay a salary that is equal or higher than the prevailing wage for the occupation location. So it's all embedded in there, but there's been a lot of abuse. Employees can transfer between employers, but it's a burdensome process. So the stated intent, right? If you come back now to the $100,000 the first time application fee, it's really to number one, to protect American workers and wages by discouraging the abuse by some companies, particularly in the IT staffing and outsourcing sector, of hiring temporary foreign workers at lower wages. So they're able to lure a lower age because the H-1B worker has not as much of a voice to demand a higher salary. The second one is to prioritize the best and the brightest. So their plan is to revamp the lottery system. So right now the lottery system is just of all the applications, it will randomly pick the numbers. So what they are doing is they're going to incentivize positions that have higher wages. Okay, so the higher wages will be weighted in this lottery system. And the idea is to encourage more senior level, more skilled, higher compensation hiring. The other thing it's going to do is going to curb some of the spamming that happens. So a lot of applications come in to the system. So this $100,000 makes a barrier and kind of stop that spamming technique. Now, some of the concerns, right? There is a disadvantage to get really good entry level talent. So a mid-career, low-paid profession could be prioritized because they eventually get a higher salary than a data scientist who's at the entry level, even though the data scientist is really what we need. So, that's one disadvantage. And the other big disadvantage from what I've heard is that smaller companies and startups, they may not be able to pay so much money upfront to get the desperate talent they need. So this is the framing of what's going on in the H-1B visa rule.
Yeah, excellent background, excellent breakdown of that. And the first thing that people hear on the news, thinking about these changes in the H-1B policy program, visa program, especially on the left, this is racist. Trump is a racist. And he's keeping immigrants out of the country. So the question I want to ask, is this policy inherently racist?
I'm gonna get on my soapbox again, and I get so triggered by the racist, fascist, narcissist, all the ists. It's like you cannot disagree, you cannot agree, you cannot do anything without someone calling you a bigot or a racist. And I think it like kills conversation. I pray, like sincerely pray that as a country we can move past all of the name calling and get down to the issue, right? I at the heart of it, there is a disparity between different races that take advantage of the H-1B visa. It doesn't make the policy racist. Trump, in the announcement, told you exactly why he wanted to do this policy. And I don't think Trump is a type of person that won't tell you why he's doing what he's doing. You might read into it, he might have alternative plans, but he at least gives you a reason why he does it. And more often than not, people don't play that because they don't want to hear the reason. They just want to call him a racist or a bigot. The number one reason why he did it is because with AI moving in, being at the centerfold, there is a lot of talent internationally. If you look at China, you look at Pakistan, you look at other countries, they have a lot of talent. The problem with the United States is we don't have a lot of talent in AI space. Matter of fact, like companies are paying hundreds of millions of dollars just to keep one engineer, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars as sign on bonus to keep one engineer. There is a drastic shortage of the talent pool. So you would think H-1B makes sense. Like you bring in people from other countries, they could populate it. But the problem with AI talent is you need to grow it in-house because otherwise all the generations that follow after us cannot compete in this space, right? It's not like programming where you teach someone a language and maybe they could pick it up on their own, right? Actually building the AI models at this juncture in human history is very critical. Now, I haven't really formulated my opinion of the H-1B visa um, and if I like the policy or not, but I don't think it's racist. To answer the core question, I don't think it's racist. I think it's business driven. I think it's thinking about long term viability of the American workforce. And, you know, one of the other topics that is interesting is I wonder how many H-1B visas are applying for green cards, and I haven't seen that trend data. Like in the past, if you look at the generation before AI really took over, right? I'm not talking about like a period of 20 years, right? Talking about 5 to 10 years. You saw a lot more people coming in and applying for green cards and going for citizenship because that's the path they wanted to take. I think the latest trend, and this is not verified, I'm just speculating. I think the latest trend is people come into the country, they learn the technology, they do their 3 years or whatever, learn the technology, and they go back to countries where they're heavily investing in that same technology and they set up their own companies and their own organization. I've read a report that some of this H-1B stuff is related to that, where you do have such an influx of people coming in, learning our technology, taking advantage of it, and then going back to their country, setting up their own businesses, and the US cannot go back into there and compete. Specifically China, specifically India. These countries are taking advantage of our institutions and our learning opportunities in the United States and then shipping that talent overseas, which is not what the heart of the H-1B visa program was. The point of the visa was to bring talent in-house and cultivate that innovation in-house and have them be part of the American story. And I don't think you're seeing that happen anymore. I'm off the soapbox. You could talk.
Yeah, no, excellent point. So, is this H-1B visa program inherently racist? I don't even want to dignify a response to this because the word racism now is used everywhere. Like, you speak out against any policy on the left, you're called racist. You vote Republican, you're called racist. You're pro-life, you're racist. You believe in closed borders, oh, now you're racist. You're a capitalist, now you're racist because you hate marginalized communities. You believe in personal responsibility, now you're racist because you don't believe in funding every solution in the world with government money. So I believe this word racist is thrown around. It's honestly lost its meaning. And sadly, this is another issue where people are throwing around the word racist when really it's a matter of generating economic value for workers and companies. So the issue of racism, I don't think is anywhere relevant in this discussion at all. But a question I do want to ask, and this is a tougher question regarding H-1B visas and the recent changes, is it good for the U.S. labor force and the economy? Some of you have touched on this a little bit. But in general, what do you think the net effect will be looking down the line now that this policy has changed?
That's the key, right? To be strategic. Like this is all about a future looking strategy. I'll give you some examples. If you look at the type of graduation rates we are seeing by country, because STEM is really important, right? About 41% of graduates in China are in the STEM field. 30% of Indian graduates are in the STEM field. Only 20% of the US graduates are in the STEM field. So the numbers, because China is huge, right? That corresponds to 3.6 million graduates from China, 2.6 million from India, and 1,000 from the US. So that's
Yeah.
what you're seeing. And then some of the stats I was seeing is like there are other degrees like psychology and education that's trumping even the STEM. So are we motivating the next generation into the right fields? Because it is expected that STEM jobs are going to grow at twice the rate than other jobs in the US. So there is a concept of pursuing your passion, but you have to also be practical in what you pursue. And are we doing that strategically as a nation is the question.
And I
It
think
is,
that's
yeah.
a good pivot point, right? Where Charlie Kirk talked about this all the time, where he kept saying college is a scam, right? And it was a triggering question, but the question inherently fits into this H-1B visa situation, where are we sending kids to school for the right reasons? Or are they coming out of school with degrees that they can't do anything with and can't make a salary? It goes back to the WNBA and NBA conversation. Like, why is the NBA player getting paid more than the female WNBA player? Because more people watch it, right? It's much more engaging of a sport versus like the viewership of the WNBA. So if you kind of extrapolate all that back to like my first point, I think as we focus as a society on questions that don't matter, like is the H-1B visa a racist decree, right? That's the wrong question to focus on. The better question is at the heart of the H-1B visa, is it still accomplishing the same goals that it did back in the 80s, back in the 90s, back in the 2000s? Or do we need to change that model? Do we need to figure out what's at the heart of the problem? And if you can't ask the right questions, you can't have the right conversations. And I think that's what we're losing as part of this overarching attack from the left about calling the H-1B visa a racist declaration, right? Like, forget about race in that conversation. Let's go back to the heart of the problem. Is it the right approach for America? Or is Trump making the wrong approach? Like, you can have a conversation about that. And I think that is a very important conversation to have.
Yeah, I think me thinking through this issue, I flip-flopped here. I think there are some pros, but I think when it comes to H-1B visas and the new policy, I think the cons of this actually outweigh the pros. Now, I'll start with the pros. I think at the very least, it starts the conversation of how, U.S. companies can begin prioritizing the hiring of U.S. workers. As you guys mentioned, I think hopefully we'll have conversations about how we can bridge the STEM gap in U.S. education. Maybe we'll start thinking seriously about this because the numbers show we are lagging far behind the world. But the cons of this policy, why I think this announcement will have an ultimate negative effect, I think it creates this illusion of job creation. It creates this visceral sense that it protects American
Right.
jobs, that we're going to hire more American engineers. But the economic reality is more complex. Research, a lot of people are saying this. H-1B workers help companies grow. They lead to more jobs for Americans, not fewer, especially when it comes to startups, high growth companies, and emerging fields. The net effect is going to be less jobs for U.S. engineers, specifically because of the threats to startups and innovative companies and new companies. Many high growth companies, take Google, take Amazon, Tesla. In their formative years, they relied heavily on immigrant talent. You create this steep fee now, you're going to raise barriers for new startups, you're going to stifle the next generation of innovation. Now think about the emergent fields. You guys touched on this: AI, biotech, quantum computing. We're cutting off access to global talent with these new H-1B visa rules. Is the U.S. going to be in a strategic position in these sectors to compete worldwide? Empirical studies show that immigrant workers contribute disproportionately to patents, entrepreneurship, and productivity gains. You guys touched on this, talking about the CEOs and many people in Silicon Valley and starting up companies. We're going to face brain drain, sadly. The smartest and most ambitious workers wanted to come to the U.S. Now they're going to look at this $100,000 fee and they're going to say, we want to go to Canada, we want to go to the UK, we want to go to other destinations that are more welcoming with more friendlier immigration policies in terms of their visas. And so I think we're going to weaken America's role as a place for a global hub for talent. Finally, we already have this weakness in our U.S. STEM pipeline. We already struggle with this gap in STEM education and undersupply of homegrown engineers, limiting access to the H-1B visa talent pool. I think it's going to worsen the skills shortage. So, in my head, if I was the economist right now, I'm not, if I was in the White House, I would propose a more balanced solution. How do we avoid the extremes of like unrestricted access or a very prohibitive $100,000 barrier? So again, this is me putting on my economics hat. I think my fee structure will be incremental. Start with a $50,000 fee in 2026, increase it 10,000 over time. I think this would allow businesses to gradually adopt, prevents a sudden shock to the labor market, which many companies are experiencing. You can provide targeted exemptions. If I was the economist, I would say give exemptions to startups, give exemptions to research-driven companies, give exemptions to companies in high growth strategic fields, AI, biotech, quantum computing, clean energy. We want American companies to remain competitive in the industries that will, define the future. I would say have some type of domestic hiring requirement. Maybe enforce companies to demonstrate that at least 80 or 90% of their workforce consists of U.S. workers. Let's help guarantee that our domestic labor pool is accessed and used here in countries. So very complex topic, I think. Initially, you look at this and you think, we're going to get all these jobs back to the American people, but I don't think that'll happen. So we'll see how
Yeah,
this all plays
I
out.
I think you're right. No, I don't know. I agree and disagree with some of your points. I think the enforcement of the 100K will probably have the short-term benefits that Trump is thinking, where people are going to invest more in their talent pool and training internally. I just don't think that training is there. Like I don't think the right material exists for AI, where people are focused on building companies, are focused on building the right talent that we need to succeed. So if you extend that policy to give tax breaks for better in-house education or something, I don't think it goes far enough to accomplish the goals that you want.
Yeah, those are excellent points. Absolutely.
I was just doing some rough math. Can you guys confirm 85,000 new applications times $100,000 per application? Can you guys,
Yeah,
one of you, just confirm my math? That
billion.
I'm just trying to make sure that the revenue.
8.5 billion.
I can tell you that for the most part, there is a lot of abuse of the H-1B, especially with consultancy firms. There's a lot of entry-level people coming. The idea was to really get high-skilled people, and that's not really what's happening. And on average, there are studies that say that the salaries that they pay the H-1B workers is about 30 to 40% less than what they should have paid the worker in the US. People have found a way to abuse the system. Like as expected, most people are just like below average, and there is probably like about 20%, probably like 30% who's above average and 5% who's really good. That we should grab them, right? The question, like you guys were alluding to, is the idea of H-1B was always to be a temporary program, right, with path to green card. The question, and I think Trump once mentioned this. Like, do we just basically say that if you have been selected to our master's program or whatever in the US, you have automatically a path to green card and citizenship, which means you're creating that pathway so that they don't go back to their country of origin, which is exactly what is happening. There's a lot of people who've gone back to India, back to China, and they start their own businesses over there. And we have lost all that valuable experience they gained from here. So I think in one of our upcoming podcasts, we should think about how do we attract the right talent and keep and really increase the IQ of the American population overall over time, and like keep us on the edge of like being the best in the world.